What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
It's time to start, Sunjay, and it is. I don't have a sign, and you know what? We can't do the music today. I'm sorry, we just can't do the music. Why didn't you? You didn't remind me of that, Sunjay.
Hey, Richard, don't forget the music.
Okay.
Well, today is November 2nd, 2022. There's the sign. If you didn't read it, too bad. It must be yours.
I'm wrong. I can do the music. I don't know how well it's going to come out because I don't have my sound set up like I have when I'm in my office, but let's give it a try, okay?
It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Could you hear it? I could hear it here.
I got half of it. First was choppy, but that's all right because Ashley was threatening to leave, so now Ashley is
No music, I'm out. Okay, yeah.
Next time we're making Ashley sing it.
All right. So again, good afternoon. Buenas tardes a todos. I am coming to you from San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I'm going to be speaking tomorrow. And Sunjay is
just outside of Toronto in Oakville, Ontario. Sunjay Nath, a speaker and author focusing on leadership and performance.
And I'm Richard Hadden. I normally live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm a speaker and author on leadership, employee engagement, and recruiting and retention a lot these days. So we thought what we'd talk about today was trust, right? Trust, not trusts, not Liz Truss, but trust. And to talk about some things related to trust in the workplace and building a culture of trust. And I'm hoping we can get some good conversation around this because as Sunjay and I were discussing right before the show, you know, a lot of what we talk about, a lot of what we're going to talk about will seem painfully obvious that yes, you need to have trust in the workplace and you need to trust the people you work with. You need to trust your boss. The bosses need to trust the people who are not bosses. And all of that. But we really would like to get some conversation going around what does trust really mean? And what are some things that we sometimes do to indicate maybe we don't have as much trust in the people that we work with as would be helpful?
And we know that we're preaching to the converted. I mean, the people who join us here on Every Other Wednesday are people who believe in, hey, when we have an organization that's open and strong in communication and able to be honest and have healthy conflict in the workplace, we are big believers, and research shows that these are more productive organizations. However, with this whole move to work at home and increase in technology, more and more organizations are appearing to show less trust by monitoring by throwing a camera on the laptop or tracking keystrokes or requiring people to physically check in every 2 seconds and check in and out if they're going to the washroom. And so
that would be bathroom for the those people south of the border,
or restrooms for all of North Americans. I found that that's universal.
But if it's in your house, I don't think it's called a restroom.
Well, you can rest there, and if it's a public one, you don't go for a bath. It's not a bathroom.
Bathroom.
So I think washroom. You should always wash, but we digress. The idea again is do these things help the organizations or do they hurt the organization?
Yeah, what do you think to our audience? I mean, I think I can predict what the answer is going to be, but I want to hear some specific comments from our audience. When you have an organization that has really started focusing primarily because of the advent of the work from anywhere movement, when you have an organization that is really focusing on the absolute minutia and the micro and trying to watch every single thing that every person does, activity rather than outcomes, what do you think that message is that it sends to the people who are being monitored?
And not that you said that at all biasedly, the minutia and the painful.
Hey, Sunjay, it's our show. We can express our views, right?
That's fair enough. But I mean, again, there's two sides to it, right? I'm going to assume most people are going to go, this is ridiculous, right? They shouldn't be watching us every keystroke. They shouldn't be doing all this. And again, I think that most people would agree to that. However, is there a time and a place for monitoring? And what is the limit? Where do we draw the line? What's acceptable and what's not?
Yeah. Well, okay. So we have another comment here from Ashley who says, when the leader becomes the babysitter, yeah, it does seem like we aren't being trusted. But yes, there is a time and a place. Now, a lot of people can remember, especially people who were around when it was said, can remember when President Ronald Reagan used a very famous three-word phrase when referring to the Soviets in terms of their nuclear activities, and that was trust but verify. And, this is not a political statement about Ronald Reagan. A lot of people can say good things about him. A lot of people can say bad things about him. But that particular phrase seems to have endured even political polarization. People say, yeah, that's probably a pretty good approach to a lot of things. Trust, but verify. So, what do you think about that?
Actor?
What?
Was Ronald Reagan, wasn't he the actor?
Yeah.
I only know that reference from watching Back to the Future. So to piggyback off that, what you were saying, this idea of trust but verify, is I remember reading some research years ago about a researcher looking at first impressions. And basically what he found was, in the first few seconds of meeting someone, you are analyzing hundreds of different metrics based on things and experiences you've had before. And he went on in his research to say that, we're constantly told not to judge, but you can't not judge. It is like it's human instinctual. It's instinctually human. And he said, there's nothing wrong with judging, provided you're mature enough to validate the assumption. So, which is exactly to your point, which is trust, but validate. I mean, if you're bringing these people in to be part of your team, if you like them enough to hire them and to say, we're trusting you with the corporate secrets, with creating a product and creating value for our customers, well, I think it's on us as an organization, as the management team, as peers, to say, I trust you. And trust doesn't mean that 100% of the time you're doing work or you're going to get shot, because people are allowed to poop at work, and people are allowed to take a coffee break, and people are allowed to take those breaks, and we don't need to prescribe everything. But the high level here to me is, and I've said this many times, is I want to predict the outcome and not the process.
Right.
Because if you can come in and in half an hour do what other people are doing in 8 hours, and the next 7.5 hours of work, you kick your feet up on the desk and you do Sudokus, I say all the power to you. Anyways.
That's an extreme example, but I think we take your point. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I like what Yvette is saying here. The message is you don't trust them. I believe the monitoring discussion should occur if you're not seeing the results. I think that's a good approach. Yeah, if you're not seeing the results, now let's have a conversation about this. But weekly conversations are maintaining those relationships, but constant monitoring is distrust. And I think that also says that creating relationships kind of obviates the need to do that. If you're a leader and you're really doing your job, then you are having conversations, even if you never see them. My daughter started a job when she first moved to Scotland. At the first week of the pandemic, she never met the people she worked with for months and months and months. And yet they had daily conversations. And she felt like she knew them already before she finally did meet them. And it's because, you're building those relationships. I also, we like to do business with people we trust. And when we trust them, we can begin to build those relationships. And I think that becomes very productive. If we just look at people as machines, and not have a relationship with them, then there's going to be a problem with trust.
Yeah. So if you've read what Janice is saying, I think in Ontario, you're required to have an employee monitoring policy. Basically, you need to tell employees if they're being monitored and to what degree and how. And she's saying, it also allows you to see what happens if things go wrong. Like we have GPSs in trucks and such. And there are different issues here. There are safety issues, and then there are also trust issues. And there are, compliance issues and that. And so I think, and again, it's come up a couple times in the chat, I think it's absolutely is, we want to be results driven first. Meaning if people are getting their stuff done, why do we don't need to be big brother watching them. And the other thing too is this has come to the forefront during the work from home movement. But does this imply that when we're in 100% working, at the location, that people weren't
doing that. Yeah.
Repeating the system or taking extra long coffee breaks, or it's been going on forever.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
as long as, again, the people are getting their stuff done, why do we care, or should we?
Right. Of course, there's some jobs where getting something done requires being there to get something done. One of the questions I often ask when I'm speaking is, are you looking for attendance or output? And the answer, which is perfectly legitimate, is yes. Sometimes I'm looking for attendance. Okay, so if you're running a hospital and you need a nurse there to be there certain times, if you're running any kind of a retail operation or anything where people have customer contact and it's time sensitive, a restaurant, a hotel, whatever, of course you need attendance. Now, is 2 or 3 minutes going to make a difference? Probably not, but that's a whole different thing. But I'm drawn back to, two things. And I can see you're champing at the bit, Sanjay. Let me just finish one thing, because if I stop talking, I'll forget it. Okay, so two things. People have asked me, well, Richard, with this whole remote working, how do I know if they're really doing their job? And my immediate smart aleck answer back to them is, how did you know before? How did you know they were doing their work before? And what difference does this make now? But the other thing is an example of let's think about the timeline of the pandemic. We thought this thing was going to last for weeks, and then we figured out it was going to be months. And there was a move toward the fall of 2020 for people to come back into the office in those organizations that had gone pretty much fully remote. And so one of my clients, I was in on a Zoom meeting with them where they were talking about their return to work plans and how they were going to do this. And somebody said, well, I don't think we shouldn't tell everybody they have to come back all 5 days a week. Let's go with a 3-2 plan where they can work in the office 3 days a week, but work remotely 2 days a week. And somebody piped up and said, oh yeah, that's fine, but it can't be Monday and Friday. That can't be the 2 days, because we know what'll happen there. And as soon as that person said that, the CEO said, wait a minute, stop. We say we trust our people. Do we trust our people? And so I've kept in touch, obviously, with this organization, and they say, that question, that was a breaking point. That was a kind of a watershed moment in terms of developing the culture in their organization, because that was a huge wake-up call to those. The CEO was saying, do we trust them or not? And so they instituted a 3-2, and you pick the 2 thing. And you know what? The organization is still in business, and they are still being productive. So I think that proved that.
I think the other piece is the communication piece.
Yeah.
Are we communicating what is the expectation? Or do we just all of a sudden bombard them and say, hey, you took 20 minutes to go to the washroom, bathroom, but you should only been done in 15. Because if they don't know the rules, they don't know if they're breaking the rules. And I'll give a quick example of this. I've mentioned this a few times that I own a bunch of, I run a courier business. And so I have a fleet of trucks and drivers. And it's under the FedEx logo, which we deliver. And so recently, like just in September, so 2 months ago, we started taking pictures at the drop. So whenever we do a delivery, we take a picture of the house, and there's all these rules around it. Like you have to not identify the house number, but it should be there. And you can't have a person in it, and you can't have the label, because they're trying to do privacy, which is funny because you're taking a picture. It's how private is it? Anyways, so they have all these rules against it. Now, this is a real big pain for the drivers, because from the driver perspective, the drivers, it's about efficiency. I want to do the delivery, drop it, move on to the next one. But now you're slowing me down, because I have to bring the device up to every house I go. And if it's a bigger package, it's harder for me to carry it. But now I actually have to stop, place it, take a picture, and it actually slows down. And it may cost them half an hour overall in the day. And so one of the workarounds is in the scanners, there's an option that says, side door delivery, front door delivery. One of them is met the customer. And if you click met the customer, you're no longer required to take a picture, again, because of privacy. So typically,
I can figure this out.
You see where this is going, huh? Typically, you might get 5 to 10% of your deliveries in a day might meet the customer. And that's usually someone sees you coming, they open the door, they let you in, that kind of thing. And so I get a call yesterday from the management telling me that one of my drivers is meeting the customer 85% of the time, which basically means he's not taking pictures. And again, this is normally it's a 5% thing. He's at 85%. Yeah, it skews the numbers a bit. So what's happening is they are monitoring this. I didn't even know that they were doing this. And now I'm getting in trouble and I got to give my guy straighten them up. Had they made it clear going, hey, look at, here's the issue. This is what we're trying to avoid. And I understand what they're trying to avoid. If there is a discrepancy in the delivery, if someone goes, I didn't receive my package, and our records show, oh, the driver gave it to you, but really what he did is he put it on the front door and the neighbor stole it, then we have an issue.
Right.
So this is what they're trying to cover their butt, which again, I totally get it. But the problem is the lack of communication.
Yeah.
And so if we're understanding, hey, we're monitoring for this reason, or the issue is, I don't know, someone keeps stealing the lunchroom trays. So this is why we have a camera here, or whatever it is. If people understand, they may not like it, but if you're upfront and forward with them, they're going to be much more accepting of it and understanding. But it's that secret monitoring. It's the, oh, I'm not telling you what I'm doing. And again, in Ontario, it's a law. And I'm not sure if that's true of every jurisdiction in North America. But if we can be upfront and use common sense and then start at it from this paradigm of I trust my people. And as long as they know that, I think people are going to be much more open to it. But also, again, wearing the management hat, I understand people do cheat the system.
Yeah.
People will go, because I can work from home, let's see if I can get away with it. How much I can, can I put a hologram of me here, or the old.
Well, there's already, I mean, just as soon as remote work became really popular or very common, there were already things that you can do that would have your mouse, moving around automatically and creating these mouse clicks and things like that. I mean, that just as soon as we come up with a rule, people will come up with a way to skirt that rule.
Right. And more rules is not the answer.
Right.
We want to do is get to the value, and the value is through communication and setting an example and leadership trust. And it's saying the expectation is you get your work done, and if you physically have to be in a place, you're there. That's the expectation. And if someone is cheating the system, let's not punish everyone in the organization. Let's deal with that one individual on a one-on-one basis.
Right. And talking about punishing them or taking sanctions against people who are abusing the system, I think one of the dangers is sometimes, especially now with the tight workforce, is people will tolerate that. So they'll say you can't do that, but they'll tolerate the bad behavior because they don't want to lose another person. And then everybody sees that that's tolerated. And I think that can kind of proliferate it. Let's look at what Yvette says, and she says in her organization, we allow hybrid and they can pick their days out of the office. We also state clearly it is okay. I love this. We also state clearly it is okay to work remote on Mondays and Fridays so they can work from the cottage or trailer if they want. Okay, that's a Canada thing for all of you United Statesians. Everybody in Canada apparently has a cottage, a second home. As long
I believe they call them cabins in the U.S.
Yeah, okay, but not everyone has one is the thing here in the U.S.
I don't have one. Oh, I'm here too.
Okay, all right.
I still live in a van down
as
by the
long
river.
as they're able to connect to the network, our management team supports it. So important to relate to what is really important to your employees while still accomplishing what you need in order to succeed. I mean, what better plan is there than that, I think that's terrific. And I think it represents a whole different approach. One is, okay, well, you have to do this, blah, 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 blah. And okay, if you have to go and work at the cottage, all right, we'll tolerate that. As opposed to, let's see what we can do to make everybody happy and still get the work done. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all going to all of this, it became clear to me, and some of the advice that I was giving in presentations was, folks, we've got to embrace the remote or hybrid, not tolerate it, because people can sure see a difference in that.
And I mean, this is no different than in the 90s, we were talking about multiculturalism and people talking about tolerating it. It's not about tolerating, it's about embracing it. And when you can celebrate it and kind of go, hey, because we can work from home, you can go to the cottage or the cabin or Darien Lakes or Six Flags or whatever it is. In the technology allows us to do that. Alyssa makes a really good point here, which is, set appropriate goals and monitor them. And, the question should be, if we're clear on what those goals are, people understand, again, the monitoring, that this is, let's not blindside people. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are on the same page, which is why they're working for the organization in the first place. But again, I think also from the flip side, to say I never wanted to be monitored, I don't think that's a fair statement either, because it's too blanket. I mean, depending on the situation, going back to the FedEx thing, we have all the GPSs in the trucks, and we have cameras. It's a requirement that FedEx has that, for example, if there's an accident, we need that footage. We actually, they've gone even further. Like the other day, I had one of my guys run a red light. Sorry, he didn't run a red light. He ran a stop sign. He missed a stop sign. He rolled through the stop sign.
It's called an analog red light. Yeah.
Exactly, analog red light. And we got a notification that he ran the stop sign because of this camera, right? And so he got in trouble for that. But there are certain things that are there for safety reasons, which I get.
Sure.
And there are things there that are, just because they're there and we can do it doesn't mean we should.
Right. Oh yeah. Exactly.
I read a something years ago. It was about a 63-year-old woman who got pregnant. Just because the technology is there doesn't mean you should. Because if you are obsessing and monitoring, and it becomes a full-time job for you to monitor someone else's time, you are redundant.
How productive are you being? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and so a lot of this discussion today, folks, it comes from an article that we read in the Harvard Business Review. And, it was talking about employers wanting to make sure that people remain productive, even when they can't be under the thumb and under the eyeballs of their overseers, if you will. And they were saying, but if you take a look at what happens in most organizations, especially with knowledge workers, there's all kinds of systems that are faulty systems that are causing people to be less than optimally productive. And they use an example of, software that, that we know there's a bug in it, and we just tell people to work around it and all that. And they spend hours and hours, or we have an inefficient system. They used an example where they said that people were sometimes switching back and forth. The article said 3,600 times a day. I don't know if I do anything 3,600 times a day, except maybe my heart beats, at least that I hope. But anyway, that's what they said, 3,600 times a day, switching from one app to the other. Could they make that a seamless thing so that there's not so many interruptions? So if an organization is really interested in productivity, there are a lot of things that they can do that don't even get into the issue of whether or not we trust. It's about enabling people with the right technology, with the right systems, with the right processes, so that they can do their very best work.
I agree. And again, so let me throw this out to the chat then. What is acceptable? I mean, let's be more specific. Is it okay to monitor keystrokes? And by the way, if you didn't read Carol's comment, it is a very Carol comment.
Well,
off topic, but no one.
You know what? It absolutely cannot be argued with.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. But no one thinks much about the 63-year-old man doing the impregnating. Now, how do you know it wasn't a cougar? It could have been a 35-year-old man doing the.
Let's not even go there. I think Mick Jagger. Okay, we love you, Carol. Yes. Where were we?
I don't know. Talking about trust or something.
We were talking about building systems that work rather than spending all this time looking and monitoring at what people are doing. But I think it really does get down to that question that CEO asked.
What is acceptable? Where is the line? Is it like, my personal opinion, should you be tracking keystrokes? I can't think of an instance in which that is a case, unless it's like a murder investigation and you have some like warrant to do so. Someone goes on, you get their banking information, you're getting their passwords, you're getting their whatever it is. I don't see an instance where that's acceptable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, getting people to check in, like we've had a punch clock in many industries for years. Is that invasive? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question, because that has been the standard. Now, my opinion is that time clocks, punch clocks, do say, we don't trust you. And I know there's, there are all kind of reasons that you have to be able to account for every minute and so forth. But as Stephen says, what is the cost of tracking and evaluating the data of keystrokes? What is the cost of tracking and evaluating the time that's there too?
I'm a numbers nerd, and I'm stealing a bit from one of the programs I do. But I talk about this idea of values over rules. And one of the big problems with rules is actually two big problems with rules is we establish rules when someone screws up, right? We even call it's the Richard rule because we know Richard messed up. And the other big problem
happens a lot.
Exactly. The other big problem with too many rules is the cost of enforcing the rules. So a lot of times people make rules and they don't even bother to enforce them, which begs the question, why do it? Or they make the rules and it's so costly to enforce them, it doesn't make sense to have the rule. The specific example I give is if you ever worked for an organization that has some silly rule that says, when you're traveling for business, you're allowed to spend $8.04 for breakfast, $12.20 for lunch, and $22.88 for dinner.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but if I'm told I can spend $22.88 for dinner, guess what? It becomes a game of the Price is Right. Right? How close can I get without going over? Because I want both showcase. But I was given this example, and a lady comes up to me afterwards, and she says $12.82. And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Our rule is $12.50 for lunch. I had someone come in and bring me $12.82 bill." And I said, "So what'd you do?" She goes, I signed off on it. I said, "I would have done the same thing." And she said, "It came back to me." I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, what happens is the employee has to fill out the form. They give it to me. I sign off on it. They go to quality control double checks it. They send it back to, and she's giving me the whole process. Now, I don't know if this may
32 cents got spent a long time ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this may come as a surprise to you guys, but I'm a bit of a numbers nerd. So when she's telling me this, I'm like, hold on a second. And I started getting excited. I said, okay, wait. So the employee fills out the form. She's like, yes. I said, how long does it take the employee to fill out the form? And she goes, I don't know, roughly 45 minutes. And then she gives it to you and you have to sign and read it off. How long does that take you? And she tells me, and you send it to her, how long does that take person? So I'm trying to find out how much time is spent. I said, okay. Now, roughly speaking, how much does this person make a year? In that role, what's the range of salary? And someone in your role who would be checking it, what's their range? Okay, and it goes through this project. So what I was trying to do is justify it, get an actual number of how much it costs them to make to catch that 32 cents. Yeah. And this was a very rough exercise, but in that moment there, based on what she told me in the calculation, it was roughly $250 is what it costs to catch this 32 cents.
To catch the 32 cents, yeah.
And someone, and I was saying that in the audience, and someone put up their hand to say, no, that's not fair, because that rule's not there to save the 32 cents. It's there to save the $10,000. And I said, okay, hold on a second. Do you think that the supervisor would write off on a $10,000 lunch? So either we trust our people or we don't.
We don't, yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Ashley and this is what I like, Sunjay, about our audience, is they have practical answers to people's questions and issues. And Ashley is saying implementing team huddles or something like that at a designated start time would be a good way to make sure the team members are there in a timely manner. Then making sure the projects are staying on tracks during huddles at whatever frequency works is a great way to determine whether or not your team is being successful. So yeah, have some built-in things that, that'll work that way. Receipts are for auditors and the tax man.
Yeah. And again, if I can speak for Canada, if you have a business, you can do a per diem rate where you get a price per meal and you don't have to worry about receipts.
Yeah.
And you just have to track where you're going to be, and you have to be at 80 kilometers outside your home, and they have all these rules around that. But there are ways to do it. But again, people will look for ways to circumvent the rules.
Sure, they'll find them. They're usually successful with that.
Absolutely. If you're looking for ways to cheat the system, you can almost always do it. So that's why more rules doesn't help. It's about the values, and values come from trust.
Right.
Here's the high level. The important part is we're trying to get widget from point A to point B in this manner. And it's not about you have to hold your left eye shut and bounce on your right leg while you're delivering the package. That's irrelevant. I want the package delivered safely. Our experience is if you close your left eye and hop on your right leg, there's a higher probability of success. We want to share what's working and best practices, but what we don't want to do is we want to dictate the outcome, not the process. Right. And as best we can do that, we should not have to monitor.
Yeah. Another thing that occurs to me, and that is, I mean, people make mistakes. People make mistakes in their personal lives and their professional lives all the time. I had it explained to me one time. Someone said, it was a manager speaking with a person who reported to him, and he said, you're going to make mistakes. He said, there's two kinds of mistakes. There's the mistakes of the head, and there's the mistakes of the heart. He said, the mistakes of the head. He said, those are great learning opportunities. We'll support you with that all the time. Now, the mistakes of the heart, that'll get you taken out. If you do something that is wrong, but you do it anyway, that's a whole different thing than if you do it wrong and you didn't know and it's learning. And I'm thinking with this whole, hovering and helicoptering and monitoring people, where's the development in that? People can't learn and develop that. And we do hear about people who just want to always be looking and making sure and all this. And I just think, how are they ever going to develop if they don't have the ability to make some mistakes, to learn what the rules are, to learn what the standards and the expectations are?
It's one of the lines I often use. I say, I want to know the rules so that when I break them, I know I'm breaking them. But you talk about that mistakes, and I say, I wrote this book called The ABCs of Student Leadership. And I was interviewed on a TV program about it in Toronto called Breakfast Television. And one of the reasons the hook that they liked when I was trying to get promotion for it, I said, let your kids fail. And that, to that point, is this idea of from failure comes experience, experience comes learning. And the example I used when I was on the show is I said, if you write a test and you get 16 out of 20 on the test, guess what the first 4 questions you're going to go look at and review us? You're going to go, oh, they got me this time. I'm not going to fall for that again. So that opportunity of creating a safe environment where people can experiment and fail and not be under the scrutiny of Big Brother is going to, whip me and give me the lashes, creates a stronger team, a more cohesive team, and it allows people to move forward.
Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned, Sunjay, is that there are, as people might have noticed, especially the more astute ones in the group have noticed, there are only 2 of us today. And that is because Jeff Tobe is on an assignment, and he will not be with us for a little while, and he'll be back. And Mike Kerr is on sick leave again. Mike's had a rough time, so he's sick again, but he's on the mend. He'll be back with us hopefully next time. Now, here's the thing: Jeff and Mike are not. They might not even watch this recording because they know that we're here and we are doing just fine, or we think we're doing fine. But they're not, and it would be the same because, we all miss from time to time. I think you have to have, Steve says the good guys, yeah. I think you have to have that level of trust, or else you're going to drive yourself crazy if you have to constantly be doing not only your job, but then super monitoring everybody else's job.
And by the way, I'm actually quite certain that they won't watch this, which is why I'm going to say Mike and Jeff have bad hair. And there you go. So
if they do watch it, we'll know. If they do watch it,
when they're beating me next time, we'll know that they actually watch it.
We're not running out of time, but we will soon. I heard an interesting conversation. It was a Zoom conversation, and it was between a number of CEOs. And one of the CEOs mentioned, and he just used this term as though it was something that everybody talks about, and he talked about time theft. And he said, well, we have to do all this to guard against time theft. And I thought, maybe that's just a common phrase that people use. I don't know, but
I mean, isn't the irony? If you're monitoring to avoid time shrinkage, time theft, think about how much time you have to put into setting up those.
Just setting it up. That's right. Exactly.
And to monitoring them, and then to defending them, and then to reprimanding people.
Right.
Whereas if you just use a simple outcome that says, are you getting your work done?
Right.
No,
exactly.
Why not? Yeah. And if yes, as you were.
And by the way, thank you, Corinne, for the vote of confidence there. She says we're doing just fine. So then when someone else was discussing this use of the CEO's use of the term time theft, they brought up, what about time theft from managers who, especially for people who are paid a salary and not paid, based on the time that they work, who say, this is the deal, we expect roughly 40 to something like that hours out of someone, but then they have no issues at all requiring another 10, 12, sometimes 20 or 30 hours out of someone in a week. And they apparently don't see that as time theft. So I think the idea of time theft can work both ways. But when you have a relationship that has mutual respect and mutual trust, and we all say, hey, look, we're trying to make a buck here, and we're trying to make a living, and we're trying to, create a great product or service for our customers. And I'm not trying to be naive. I know that, I know all of this other exists, but can we not just say, look, I was an adult when you hired me. I have not done the Benjamin Button thing and gone back in age. I've not regressed. And so let's just treat each other like responsible, honest adults. And I also firmly believe that we get what we expect to get. And if there is a sense of distrust, I have no data to back this up, but just accept my own experience and observations, is that there's going to be more reason to distrust. And yet, if we are trustful, there will be people who will take advantage of it. But I think we still come out ahead.
I agree. For years, I've said, language I've used is, I would think we live in a universe that those who are grateful get more to be grateful for, and those who whine and complain will get more to whine and complain about. So yeah, it's the same thing. It doesn't mean you won't get burned, but I believe that you want to start off every relationship from a standpoint of trust, that a possibility of win-win is there, and then look to move from there. I had a friend that used to say this. You had a friend. People walk through the world like this, and he goes, but other people walk through the world like this. And the problem is, when this happens over time, you get that. This is a visual. So if you're only listening to the program, you're going to have to watch the video.
Right.
And he goes, but if by default we start off by trusting people, and both people walk through the world like this is where we get into these types of relationships. And so I thought it was a cute, physical metaphor that says, if our default is we assume that we're bringing on people that we trust, that they have similar values, that they want the organization to move forward. And I think people forget this too, is by default, people are on our side. People want us to succeed and want to be successful. An analogy I've used for years when I've coached people on presentation training, people who are scared of presentation training, and then they're like, oh, what if they don't like me? Or what if they boo me or whatever? And I'm like, in the history of the world, no one has ever entered a presentation going, I hope this sucks. I hope it's a complete waste of time. I hope it's boring. I hope I'm embarrassed for the speaker in advance. It's the same thing with all relationships. People don't go in going, I hope my boss doesn't trust me. I hope I can look to screw the system over. People by default go, I want to go and create value. I want to go have fun. I want to go laugh. I want to go make some friends. And I want to make the world a better place. So how do we foster an environment that allows people to do that?
Well, and some people would say, Sanjay, that is a naive approach, because that there are people who are going to screw the system and all that. But I believe, and I think this is what you're saying, is that if overall you'll approach it from a position of trust, you are going to have some people who will disappoint you and who will take advantage of you. But net, you come out way ahead. I
always say, lock your doors, but don't bar your windows. If you've ever seen the movie Sneakers, if someone wants to hack you, they're going to hack you. So I'm not like saying don't put passwords on your stuff, but if you're changing your password every 30 minutes, and for the triple encryption, voodoo, inverted candlestick, backflip coding, someone, if they really want to hack your system, they're going to. So as best we can, will you get burned? Absolutely. But I believe you will still get burned if you monitor everything and you
exactly
keystroke and all that sort of. So I think overall, you're better off. You're further ahead of the game to take moderate steps to monitoring, using a heck of a lot of communication, common sense, and trust. You're going to get further quicker than if you're trying to be a helicopter boss, parent, educator, peer, or any of that stuff.
Exactly. Well, one of my favorite cartoons that I've seen, and I don't have it on this computer, so I can't show it as a visual, but yeah, I think I can describe it in a way that you can all imagine. And that is a boss looking over the shoulder of an employee typing on his keyboard, and the boss says to him, "There is no hyphen in micromanagement." And I just, I just enjoy looking at that because, yeah, I think people who are that way might not see it in that way. But trust is, Stephen R. Covey, the son of the father, wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And he really makes the point that there is a trust premium and there's a distrust tax. I think in our processes.
The son of the father. That's always the case.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make sure people understood that. Yeah. But anyway, well, you know what, folks, it is 44 minutes past the hour, whatever hour it is. Ashley Shannon has given us a link to her favorite TED Talk about how to build and rebuild trust by Francis Frey. We have all kinds of really great, insightful folks on the other end of this. And it's a good thing because Sunjay and I don't have all that much to offer, but we're really glad to facilitate the discussion of all of this brain trust that is out there. So we're going to sign off now. We're going to be back when? On November the what? Sunjay?
November 1/6.
November the 16th, 1/6. And Stephen says it's because they trust us. Thank you very much. So anyway, and I promise next time we will have the music and we'll have all of the bells and whistles.
And
until then,
more guys.
Yeah, we will. Until then, always great to see your names popping up, and thanks for being with us. And we'll see you when, Sunjay?
Every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday. Bye now.
Cheers, folks.